Darren Marchant with American Nomad News. Please excuse my scruffy appearance and the roughness of presenting my ideas through this very limited medium without any graphics or anything I can work with to show you what I mean. But let's get on to a subject here. Space. It's a spacey place. That's why we call it space, because there's lots of space in that place we call space. So many ideas about space stations are predicated on the idea of what someone in a video I recently watched called min-maxing, based on video games. Nobody should base their logic on video games. They're basically based on tons of falsehoods and illusions anyway, so come on, let's get into the real world. In order to build in space, one aspect is that you need a whole lot of material. Not all that material needs to come from the surface of the Earth, but some of it will. It's the nature of things. You start where you're at, you get where you're going, and you use the local resources. It's called in situ utilization. The moon has plenty of aluminum. And aluminum is an excellent material for building in space. It also has plenty of iron. It also has oxygen. It has water. In short, it's a pretty good resource for a lot of materials. And every element in the periodic table is in our solar system. Even more reachable and more mineable in space than it is on Earth. We can only scratch the surface of Earth, but when we find an asteroid, we can completely disassemble it. There are responsibilities, and there's other videos I need to make in order to discuss these things, but let's take a look at this. For mining to happen on the moon requires a number of different issues. Law is a part of that. Space law needs to be adapted, and negotiations need to happen, and the moon needs to be a project that is managed through the United States as a mediator and a doorway that doesn't close for those who come legitimately. There needs to be a lot of equipment on the ground on the moon. And that requires heavy lifting rockets to bring that equipment to the moon. The problem is the equipment that we use for mining here on Earth will not work on the moon. No atmosphere, no diesel engine. No source of diesel fuel, no diesel engine. Now we can adapt for that. Just said hi to somebody coming into the church where I sleep behind the wall here. And so if we're going to mine material on the moon, why is that relevant to building space stations? Because the amount of fuel it takes to ship something from the surface of the moon to our orbit is a lot less than the amount of fuel it takes to go from the surface of Earth up through all that atmosphere and that much higher gravity up to the same orbit. And building space stations outside of the Van Allen radiation belt makes more sense than inside it in some cases. In other cases, it may make sense to have a low Earth orbit space station, but that space station has more limits aligned to it. Now, basically what you need in order to build any big infrastructure in space is lots of stock materials. These stock materials, why do they call it stock materials? Because it's on the stock shelf. You have standardized steel pipes and sheet and strips, aluminum pipes and sheets and strips and flat plates and all these kinds of standard shapes. You can buy an aluminum sheet that's a 1/4 inch by 4 by 8. You can buy a steel sheet that's a 1/4 inch by 4 by 8. These are standard sizes, and they often come in multiple types of metal. It's also possible to build with wood in space, because once we build a big enough initial space station, lumber can be produced, and quickly. With bamboo, we can make engineered lumber and use that to build structures. That particular material, the engineered lumber, has limitations, which it's very easy to understand that people will object or blah, 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 but they can be used. They also sequester carbon, which is great for use on Mars. We can turn Mars CO2 into oxygen and lumber and use the lumber to expand a scalable surface encapsulation. Instead of terraforming Mars, we encapsulate large percentages of the surface. That's more in another video. Go take a look. We don't need to give up bathrooms or individual rooms. In my view of space, we designate for each and every individual living in space a large quantity of volume encapsulation. I'm thinking a cubic kilometer, cubic mile would be good to start. We may want to move that up later as we decide that we can do it and people like the idea and encapsulate more space. And they can put all the astroponics systems that they want in there to produce all their goods, and if they and they'll all their food and supplies can come from that for most part. And if they want to produce something special they're really good at and sell that for other materials to improve their space, or even expand the allocation for everyone's minimum volume, hey, let's do that. Space is a big place. We can have swimming pools in microgravity if we build a torus, which is something like the shape of a tire without a rim in it, out of, let's say, acrylic. So it's clear. Fill it full of water and spin it. You got a swimming pool. Isn't that cool? We can do a lot with space. I'm so sick of this minimalist attitude of we got to stop having babies and everybody's got to, extend their lifetime forever and we can't fit into this infinite universe. Screw that. This is Darren Marchant with American Nomad News. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share. Click the bell icon. I definitely would be able to bring you better content if I can afford to have a place to live and a computer to work with that's up to the task of doing the graphics. Thank you very much. God bless.